Hey guys, it's Paul here at Impulsive Culinarian, and welcome to part 3 of my St. Patrick's Day recipe series. This video, I'm talking to you about a traditional Irish treat called Barmbrack. So Barmbrack, basically it's a fruit loaf. It's akin to like a panetone or a fruitcake, all right? Only it's the Irish version, traditionally served around Halloween. But listen, for us North Americans, okay, we'll take any excuse that we can get to serve and enjoy Irish food along with a few pints. Now this stuff is fun because I've learned a lot about it as I've researched it over the past few weeks. You're taking some dried fruits, all right, all the dried fruits that you'd normally have in a panetone, but you're reconstituting them in black tea. So I went and I got a little bunch of black tea at my bulk store, and I've also picked up some interesting dried fruits. I didn't want to just put the regular Sultana Raisins in. Of course, I got some of those, Sultana Raisins. I got some currants as well, some dried currants. And then the thing about bulk stores is they've got a whole bunch of weird stuff, right? They got dried anything you can imagine. And so I've got a bunch of these dried mixed berries. They're from Canada, so I'm proudly supporting Canadian produce. But there's cherries in here. I think that there's probably some cranberries and mixed up little dried berries, blueberries, all kinds of fun stuff. So whatever you can find, I highly recommend that you get 2 or 3 different types of dried fruits, including, all right, or as well as some black currants, some Sultana raisins, and some golden raisins as well. All right, so here are the rest of the ingredients that you're going to need. All right, so let's call this first batch of ingredients the soaking ingredients. All right, so you're going to need 2 cups of freshly brewed black tea, 1/4 cup of golden raisins, 1/4 cup of Sultana raisins, 1/4 cup of dried cherries, if you can find them, 1/4 cup of dried currants, and 1/4 cup of some other dried fruit. Something fun that you can find depending on your area. Go for it. Basically, all told, you want a total, all right, including the raisins, of 1 1/4 cups of dried fruits. All right, so for the bread component, let's talk about the yeast mixture, guys. You're going to need 3/4 cup of warm water, 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, and 2 teaspoons of sugar. Now for the dry ingredients, you want to get 1 1/3 cup of tapioca flour, 2/3 cup of potato starch, 2/3 cup of cornstarch, 2/3 cup of corn flour, 2/3 cup of sweet rice flour, 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of guar gum or xanthan gum, whichever you can find, 1 teaspoon of fine sea salt, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Now for the wet ingredients, get yourself 1/2 cup of warm water, 1/2 cup of warm dairy-free milk, 1 organic egg, 1/3 cup of dairy-free margarine, which you're going to melt. And now lastly, for the additional ingredients, 1/3 cup of marmalade, 1 tablespoon of fresh orange zest, and 2 tablespoons of organic honey. So I've tested this out and I've enjoyed it thoroughly, guys. Let's get started on some Barmbrack. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a pot of water on the boil and preheat your oven to 375. So there's not many recipes that I can think of, not one actually, that I can think of, other than this one that starts by brewing a fresh cup of tea. How European can you get, okay? So my water's on the boil, it's come to a boil. And we've got a long history of steeping tea in our family. So these little contraptions right here, that's the bomb right there. Make sure you get yourself a large enough mug that'll hold 2 cups or more of finished product. And get your black tea into this beautiful steeping device. There's lots of different steeping devices that you can find. This is my absolute favorite. It's certainly the best in our opinion. All right, so once your water has come to a boil, make sure you get your black tea in the steeper and fill it up. Make sure there's at least 2 cups of liquid in that container. Next, you want to get 3/4 cup of warm water, no more than 100 degrees, okay? I've done this a lot of times, and we're lucky enough that I can drink it straight from the tap. So I'm just getting 3/4 cup of hot water, not scalding, but just hot enough. If you're not sure, and if you can't drink the tap water, you can always boil a little bit of water, let it cool, add an ice cube, and use an instant read thermometer to get it down to when it's at 100 degrees. Add it to your bowl. You don't want to kill the yeast when you add it into the yeast and sugar mixture. All right, so 3/4 cup of warm water. Next, to that warm water, you want to add 1 tablespoon of Traditional Active Dry Yeast, okay? And 2 teaspoons of sugar. Next, you want to whisk that yeast mixture together really well till everything is nice and dissolved, and set it aside so that it can proof while you're preparing the rest of your stuff. All right, so while the tea is steeping, guys, at least 3-4 minutes. Make sure that this is nice and dark. Get your dried fruits into a clean bowl. So here's a lovely melange of dried fruits, golden raisins, sultanas, dried cherries, blueberries. I got the whole gamut in there. And of course, my tea has been steeping for a good 5 minutes, so I'm sure it's nice and dark. Oh yes, that's a good looking dark tea. So I'm gonna add that liquid into the bowl and let these reconstitute. That's the best part right there. Okay, add your tea to the dried fruit. All right, so set your dried fruits and black tea mixture aside while you prepare the rest of the recipe. Okay, so next, guys, you want to get a big mixing bowl for all of your dry ingredients. That's the flours, the starches, the sugar, the baking powder, all of that list of dry ingredients. Get it in the big bowl and whisk it together so it's thoroughly combined. All right, so to the long list of dry ingredients, don't forget to include your teaspoon of cinnamon and half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Whisk away. Oh, the unmistakable hint of cinnamon that changes the entire loaf. Some of you who already know my bread recipe, I'll put a link up here to that. It's very, very similar to my white bread, my gluten-free white bread recipe, with of course a few modifications. The corn flour here, instead of the rice flour, gives it that beautiful yellow color, and the cinnamon, of course, well, it just makes it a holiday loaf. All right, so let's get another small clean bowl so we can prepare the wet ingredients. Okay, so you want to start off with half of a cup of warm water, and you want to get a half of a cup of warm dairy-free milk. What does that mean? Get your half a cup of dairy-free milk out of the fridge, put it in the bowl, and slap everything in the microwave for around 30 to 40 seconds. Okay, so the reason we want the wet mixture to be warm, guys, is because when that yeast is rising, okay, and the whole loaf is getting nice and airy, we don't want to stunt that by adding, a whole bunch of cold liquid into the mix. That's why we just warm everything up enough so that it keeps that growing process alive. So get yourself 1/3 of a cup of dairy-free margarine, put that in a small heat-safe bowl, microwave that as well to melt it for around 30 seconds. Okay, melted margarine, warm water with milk. Now don't overdo it and go microwaving that for like 5 minutes. We don't want it boiling because we do have to add 1 organic egg and we don't want to cook it. So everything nice and warm, and then we're going to mix it all together with a whisk. All right, so before we mix all of these ingredients together, I want to talk to you about the pan that I'm going to be using. I've decided to make this in a round pan, okay? I wanted to have a nice sort of a round loaf. You can do it in a standard, bread pan, 9x5x3, as long as you got one that's big enough. But the thing is, I like to use this round one. The reason I'm using a springform pan, okay, is because it's the only 9-inch pan that I've got that has 2-inch sides or bigger. These pie plates, okay, that you can get, 9-inch pie plates, it's only 1.5 inches high. Guys, it's not high enough, all right? So if you've got a cake pan, 9-inch by 2-inch, excellent. In the absence of that, get yourself a springform pan with the great big 2-inch sides, and that'll do the trick. Line that with a round of parchment paper. All right, guys, so if you would like to enjoy a very fruity cup of tea, then be sure to drain off that liquid and save it for later on. Otherwise, drain off the tea from your dried fruits and get ready to add them to the batter. Next, get yourself a cake spatula and let's start adding the wet ingredients into the dry. Give it another quick whisk before you do so, just to make sure that everything is thoroughly combined. Then go ahead and add your proofed yeast mixture. Now start working that together using a cake spatula. All right, so once you've got that combined basically as much as you can with the cake spatula, you're going to see that there are still some pockets of dry flour and such left over. So that's when you want to switch to a great big egg whisk, all right? So you want to get that in there and work it using all your muscles to get it all nice and smooth. Bust out your muscles. So it's night and day, guys. If you've just stuck with the cake spatula and then you've got a bunch of these little pockets of dry ingredients, but as you can see, after whisking thoroughly, it is nice and smooth, and that's where you want it to be. Here's a tool I don't get to use all the time, a microplane. This is really, really nice and sharp. So, zest an orange. citrusy. All right, so it's time to add the last ingredients. 1/3 of a cup of marmalade, a couple of tablespoons or the zest of 1 orange, and of course all the hard work that you've done of brewing black tea to reconstitute these dried fruits, get those into the bowl. So there is a very, very fragrant mixture. Let's get the cake spatula and fold it all together. Fold away. All right, so go ahead and pour that into your parchment-lined 9-inch springform pan or 9-inch cake pan. All right, so once you've filled up your pan, guys, set this aside in a warm, dry place. Let it rise for around 15 minutes. All right, so just to prove my point, guys, the reason why the 2-inch sides of your cake pan or springform pan are so important, you can just see that the level of a 1.5-inch 9 by 1.5-inch pie plate is not even high enough. This hasn't even risen for a full 15 minutes, okay, and it'll go higher. So unfortunately, pie plate, not good. Don't use it, it'll make a mess. All right, so once your Barmbrack has risen for 15 minutes, get it in the oven, 400 degrees center rack for 40 minutes. "40 minutes has expired. Let's get this out." Oh, there's a lovely Irish fruit loaf, if I ever did see one. All right, so the advantage of using a springform pan, guys, you can just pop that open after 5 minutes and literally take the loaf and put it on a cooling rack just like this one. If you've used a 2-inch high cake pan, you may want to run a knife around the edge and then sort of gently urge it out upside down before you flip it onto the rack. Either way, get on a cooling rack and let it cool. There's a beautiful springy loaf of fresh Irish Barmbrack fruit bread. What a delicious treat. This is best served warm, guys, so you'll maybe let it cool 10-15 minutes max. Then you want to slice into that, serve up a beautiful wedge, drizzle it with a little bit of honey, or serve it with a side of butter, jam, something fun. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. So guys, thanks for watching part 3 of my St. Patrick's Day recipe series. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, you know what to do. Be sure to smash the subscribe button, guys. Don't miss any of the great videos that are coming up, 3 every week. There's my Thursday quick and easy healthy recipe menu series, as well as every Wednesday. I'd love to have you join me right here, live in the Impulsive Culinarian kitchen, as I open up a brand new vintage of my latest favorite wine from the wine fridge. My name is Paul, Impulsive Culinarian, signing off. I'll see you in the next video, guys. I think